Welcome back, everybody. As all of you know, the Forbidden Limited list has come out and people hate it. Despite seeing a lot of hits that are good between Fiendsmith's Lacrima, Appaloosa, Beatrice, Hot Red King Calamity Dragon being banned, all of which are very good for different reasons we'll get into, some of the lesser hits or lack of hits on the Forbidden list has left people wanting for more. Although we did get Snake Eye Ash and Poplar 2-1 on the limited section, that was basically all that had been hit for Snake Eye other than the Fiendsmith stuff being hit through Lacrima and Beatrice. Couple that with some lesser one-ups, that being Opening of the Spirit Gates, Branded Fusion, things like that, that don't really hurt those decks all that much or stop what they do entirely. And you'll see that a lot of people are just not okay with how this was handled. Now, why is that? The hits on this list, for all intents and purposes, were really good. Having Appaloosa be banned, meaning that more decks are going to be able to play through boards better as they don't have a functional skill drain available on every board, meaning that decks like Chimera and White Forest, ones that primarily rely on engine to get through the board, have an easier time playing into whatever the best deck is. Calamity Dragon is going to ensure that you don't just die against the Centurion decks. And bans for Beatrice and Lacrima are great for two reasons that are kind of intertwined. With Beatrice and Lacrima, every deck that had access to the Fiendsmith engine could almost always find a way to make it bump up their consistency. Beatrice would dump whatever they needed, Lacrima made Beatrice, and kind of worked in tandem. And while I expected them to ban Beatrice, I was not ready for Lacrima, arguably the higher issue. Lacrima is what allowed people to make level 8 so easily while having still the sequence. This means that you have to commit harder to get whatever rank 8 you want, because that is all that's going to come out of your Fiendsmith engine. Additionally, you are no longer going to be able to burn for time because Lacrima is banned, meaning that a lot of side deck options to beat this burn in time are going to be scrapped, which I am so excited for. As someone who had to play Emergency Provisions and Ghost Sister in decks like White Forest Runic, I personally think that's really cool. I hated that ban. I hated the burn. However, if you notice, that's only 4 cards banned. So then prompts the question, why not ban more? I think that question perfectly exemplifies why people are not okay with this Forbidden Limited list. We have been in Snake Eye format for almost a year now. With the release of Phantom Nightmare, we got things like Poplar, which really skyrocketed the deck to fame, and we saw the deck evolve over time, going from Fire King Snake Eye to Pure Snake Eye to back to Fire King Snake Eye and then back to Pure Snake Eye again, and now here we are with Fiendsmith Snake Eye. I think people are upset with these hits because they are hits that dampen the deck but don't kill it. These hits would probably be a godsend if they were 2 months ago. If this list came out in July, everyone would have loved it. The issue is we've had to deal with these cards for so long that now knowing that the deck is not dead, just that annoys people. Considering that the deck has been viable for almost 8 months now, it is not hard to see why people thought we were going to get more intense bans. Something like a Flamberge ban, functionally a block dragon for the deck, would have been a massive ban for the deck, as it basically stops and puts a cap on the things they're able to do on their turn. Instead, they hit things like Ash and Poplar, which, while yes, hurts the consistency of the deck, and yes, hurts the follow-up of the deck, still doesn't make the deck not playable. Sure, it makes it less desirable than things like a U-Bell or a Tempite Dragon, which are undoubtedly going to be the next best decks of the format, but Snake Eyes is still playable. People are already finding ways to just fit in the Fire King engine with the Fiendsmith stuff, and well, there you go. I think after waiting this long for a ban list, what I think was unironically the longest wait between ban lists that we've had ever, I think people were just expecting more. People were expecting that when we got out of this ban list, the top 3 decks weren't going to be Snake Eye, U-Bell, Tempite, because that is what it has been for a very long time. People wanted some sort of shakeup, people wanted some sort of definite change. To look at this list and in 2 days time go, oh my god, I have no idea what's going to happen. They wanted to look at that list and know that Snake Eye was dead, know that U-Bell was back to being tier 2, and that Tempite wasn't strong enough to contend as best deck. We didn't really get any of that. Now, that's not to say that this list isn't amazing. I love a lot of things about this list. It's really hard not to. Appaloosa being banned is probably one of the best decisions I have seen. Although I am a newer player, something I'll touch in a little bit more about later, I still did not like Appaloosa. I was there a little bit for Tri-Brigade, but the difference between Tri-Brigade and recent decks is that Tri-Brigade built up to an Appaloosa, and the whole game plan operated around that Appaloosa with things like a Sure Rate to protect. That is not the case anymore. A lot of decks can just barf out the material to make an Appaloosa before they even start their actual plays. This was especially annoying for a lot of rogue decks because more often than not, the barrier to whether or not your deck was good or not was whether or not you can play through an Appaloosa. I agree with the school of thought that an Appaloosa at the end of the day is basically a skill drain for however many you have. It's really annoying to know that if you can't just get through the 3 negates that the Appaloosa usually has, you just lose. On top of that, not knowing that I will no longer be Calamity locked is a godsend, and although the Gimmick Puppet lock is still there with Brand of Fusion to 1, though the OCG and the Master Duels prove that that does not do anything to inhibit the deck, it will mean that we see it more because Branded will lose the grind game that it has had previously, meaning that variants that do not play Gimmick Puppet are going to functionally be worse. Yes, I'm not exactly happy about that, but also I understand that it's not really changeable, at least at the current moment. I wish they would have hit it, but I will at least take the fact that Calamity and Gimmick Puppet are now out, meaning that that is the only FTK we really have to contend with. And finally, the Appaloosa and Lacrima bans. I think those are really good because one of the faults of the Fiendsmith engine is the fact that it went into generic stuff. Outside of that, the Fiendsmith engine is, dare I say, very, very fun and really cool that it helps a lot of decks just up their game plan and get to that next level of play. I just hated that you were able to make these generic extra deck monsters with it so often to the point where you didn't really use the Fiendsmith engine to enhance your deck's own engine, say like a Chimera would. You would just use it to make a generic body and then play with other cards. But now that Beatrice and Lacrima are banned, not only do you not get burned when they do that, they can't do that. At least not without basically committing the entire Fiendsmith line to get to things like a Wave King Caesar. Even with a Forbidden and Limited list like this, there's just too many glaring issues to ignore. Snake Eye not being out of the competition means that come time for Rage of the Abyss when we get the Azamina cards, just means that it's basically going to fix all the problems that the deck had, plus give it a negate to help force its plays through, even without an Appaloosa. And although yes, the hit opening put Pot and Sanguine Summoning to 1, it doesn't do that much, especially for Yubel. The only reason why they hit opening to 1 is because opening is a soft once per turn, meaning that the more copies you have of it, the more you can use it and boost your plays up that much more. It's more of a soft tap to Yubel, if anything else. I don't think they were actually intending to hit it that hard, but they really should have. And although yes, Pot to 1 and Sanguine Summoning to 1 is very, very important, as that also hits the consistency of the Tempai deck, and means that when you get rid of the field spell, you know it's gone, they don't just have a second one in hand. However, it is still a very, very annoying deck to fight, considering that it can just kill you if it draws what it needs to. What players are looking for is something that just wipe clean these 3 decks, or at least push them down to a definitive tier 2 to let other decks rise into the limelight. We just didn't get that. And a lot of people are scared that when we get to Rage of the Abyss, the Azamina cards are just going to fix the problems that this Forbidden Limitless gave to those decks and just functionally put us back to square one. I think these next 6 weeks coming up are going to be a dampened version of the format which we played in. I think it's not a bad thing, but I just don't think that's what players wanted to hear after having to play this format for over half a year. That being said, I think that it's going to be Rogue Deck's time to shine for these next 6 weeks, as I think that Yubel is a tad bit easier to fight than Snake Eye, and Snake Eye is just not going to be that good. But come time for Rage of the Abyss, we're really going to need a second list to kill something. Whether it be Yubel, Snake Eye, Tempai, or all of the above, this meta cannot stay this way when it gets to Rage of the Abyss, or else we're just going to restart way back to the beginning and essentially be at Stage 1. This list, for a very good reason, is very upsetting to a lot of the veteran players of this game. But what about people who have just gotten into the game? I can't speak for everyone, but in the year that I've played this game, it has quickly become my favorite TCG ever. Between Star Wars Unlimited, Pokemon, Magic, this thing just has a spark that no other game is able to get from me. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just one of those games that if you really like its core mechanics, you'll really, really like the game. There's so much to choose through, so much to do, and so much to just play that it is truly a game like no other. That being said, I'm not going to disagree that this game can have a lot of very low points, this being one of them. This past year has been, at least from what I've seen, one of the worst years for Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever. Between the high price point for staple cards, the format that we're in where a deck is so oppressive that it warps everything around it in such a negative way, And the printing of things like Gimmick Puppet and Tempai to be budget options ended up being just more frustration for players because you don't want to play against an FTK, and then you don't want to play against a deck that just feels like you have no agency when you play against it. Despite that, I'm still choosing to stick with this game, even with its frustrations. Which kind of sucks because a lot of the people that got me into this game are now leaving because they don't really want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! With how it is right now. It puts me in this weird situation where I really want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! But a lot of my friends just can't make themselves to play a game that is so frustrating right now. I can't really say that I blame them. As I mentioned earlier, Snake Eye has been the dominant deck for over 6 months now, and considering that it wasn't hit enough in the sense that it didn't stop what the deck does, come time for Rage of the Abyss, if nothing else happens, we're just going to be back to a Snake Eye format. So then why play this game? Well, I find it fun. Even with the stupidness of the Fiendsmith engines and the U-Bells and the Tempais and the Snake Eyes, I still think this game is fun. And I think above all else, I play this game for a community. The locals I go to, the people I've met, that is the reason I like this game. Not necessarily the cardboard or the artwork. Maybe it's me being optimistic, or the fact that I've only had a year into playing this game and haven't had a chance to have my optimism be beat down by Konami of America, but I'm at least hopeful. At least from what I've seen, time after time after time for this year, we are so close to having something so good, it just needs a couple of tweaks here and there, and I think we're back at that exact same spot. Yes, is it annoying that the next best decks are going to be U-Bell and Tempai, something that we've seen before? Yes, it is a little annoying, but it is toned down. Rogue decks are going to have a bit more of a limelight to shine, and overall, I think that the game's going to be a bit easier to play, especially with 2 of the 3 notable FTKs being gone. I think that we're really close to having something really cool here, and I'm hoping that at least a little bit before Rage of the Abyss, or close into Rage of the Abyss, we see some type of hit or list, because I think it would not be a good thing if we go to Rage of the Abyss only for the Azamina cards to essentially fix the Snake Eye deck and basically just piss off everyone while doing it. As for me, I'm going to continue enjoying the game. Currently, I've been playing White Forest Runic, and unironically, White Forest is looking really good now with this list. A depowered Snake Eye was basically what we were looking for, since Tempai and U-Bell isn't too bad of a matchup for us. With Appaloosa gone, our stuff resolves more, so that's pretty nice. I know I want to play a Fiendsmith deck, as I played Fiendsmith U-Bell for the Nats. I did sell my U-Bell stuff though, saying I would buy it later. I wasn't expecting U-Bell to just go home scot-free, so I don't know if I'll be buying back my stuff anytime soon, but definitely want to look at some other Fiendsmith decks, because things like Chimera look pretty fun, and I want to try those out. Listen, from what I've seen, Yu-Gi-Oh!, as fun as it is, can be a very, very frustrating game because of the people running it. And while I am going to stick with it because I'm only a year in and have a bit of optimism that things can be better because I joined through the Heart of AGOG format, a format that I'm sure a lot of you love, I have seen what this game can be when it is balanced and really, really fun. So I think that I want to keep playing it and give Konami a chance, even though I'm sure a lot of people who are veterans to the game know that that is probably not a good decision. I just hope that eventually, when or if this game ever gets back to a state of playability, that people find it fun and not as frustrating as it is now, that people will come back to the game and will not see YCSs go under 1,000 people. See ya.